This is episode 3 of Youthful Perspectives. I'm your host, Mason Bierbaum. My guest today is the former Albany head football coach and athletics director, Jim Mader. Having grown up hearing numerous stories about Jim's forceful presence on the sidelines, I was fortunate to experience this firsthand when Jim decided to rejoin the Albany football coaching staff my senior year. What was evident then and still is now was Jim's timeless wisdom about the game of football, his concrete understanding of what creates a winning team, and his commitment to instilling the basic life lessons sports can teach us. During our conversation, Jim and I discussed wide-ranging topics like JFK's assassination in the Vietnam War, lucky breaks centered around football and coaching overseas, painful shortcomings, and lasting legacies. Even if you don't find football as captivating as Jim and I find it, our conversation demonstrates how extraordinary and unique Jim's life has been. I hope you enjoy listening to this conversation as much as I did. And now, Jim Mader. All right. Well, thank you, Coach Mader, for sitting down with me today. My first question I have for you is, what was your childhood like growing up?
Well, I grew up in a strong Catholic family in Mound, Minnesota. Very German. Both my mother and father are German. Their descendants are from Germany. My grandfather came over here in 1912 or something like that on a ship. And
right before World War I.
Yeah,
wow.
I think they escaped Germany for that reason. And then my father grew up in Iowa, and my grandfather died when he was a young age, and they all got sent to orphanages.
Really?
So, yeah, and so he had a tough life, but he really a good man, very strong faith, and he did a hard worker. He was a welder for most of his life, and then he took over as a shop supervisor and ended up vice president of the company at the end. So a very successful life.
Absolutely.
And my mother was a homemaker, never worked out of the house, never drove a car, just the best cook in Stearns, Hennepin County, I guess, back then. So she was just, I think they were very good parents, and we have a very, I think, happy memories of our childhood.
That's great. Do you know what area of Germany your grandfather came from?
Passau, right on the Austrian border.
Okay.
And we visited over there when I coached football over in Austria, and I think it was the same town that Hitler was supposed to have been born and Pope Benedict. So
quite the range of people.
They had that on one of the churches at the home place of Hitler and Pope Benedict.
There you go. A lot of people can fall in between those two right there. That's funny. Well, you kind of alluded to faith and just hard work, I'd say, with your parents. Is there other lessons that they taught you growing up?
Yeah, I think so. I think one of them was hard work and or stay on task and do your best. Mm-hmm. I don't think we had a lot of parenting. We just grew up together, you know. I had 5 siblings, and I was the second oldest, and I think each one teach one, and there we went. Sports were very important. My older brother was a very good athlete. Tragically, he passed away at age 50, but he was really talented. Mm-hmm. I had lesser talent, but I probably did more in the sports arena than he did. So,
okay.
But anyway, it kind of led the way for my 3 other brothers and 1 sister, and we're very close right now.
That's great. So would you say you guys kind of, as an older sibling, led by example, kind of had to hit the speed bumps for your other siblings so they wouldn't make those same mistakes?
Yeah, I think we made some mistakes, and maybe they learned. I think there was two different families in my immediate family. There was my brother, myself, and my next brother, Mick. We kind of were together, and then the other 3 were born later. Mm-hmm. And I think they got a little more parenting and maybe learn from our mistakes.
There you go. I can relate to that, too, with having 2 older brothers who are 10 years and 7 years older than me. And then I have my sister, Josie, who's only 3 years younger than me. It's kind of, I can understand where you're coming from with that. I think that's relatable to a lot of people. So you talked about sports growing up, and now that was a big thing. Was there, what particular sports were you interested in growing up?
Well, we played Little League Baseball, and that was very highly organized. We lived on a 20-acre hobby farm outside of Mound on So it was hard to get there. It was 2 miles or more. So we rode our bikes in or hitchhiked back
Oh,
then.
really?
Yeah. And so that's the way we had to get to practice and games. And a lot of times my dad worked night shift, and my mother didn't drive, so we were kind of had to get there on our own.
Be resourceful.
Yeah. And so that was highly organized, and that was like ages 10, 11, and 12. And then I suppose then we didn't have any I didn't have any football background at all until 9th grade.
Wow.
Didn't know how to put on my girdle pad. I didn't know which one in front and what went in back. So it was a new experience.
Mm-hmm. So it was baseball and football. Did you do a basketball at all or anything like that?
I think until maybe 10th grade, and then kind of I wasn't tall enough, fast enough.
Yeah, that usually.
So, I think that's a skill level that I didn't have.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, certainly football is more of a, I don't know, you don't have to be the best athlete to be a good football player. Obviously, great athletes can be great football players, but the less athletic don't necessarily mean you're going to be less talented on the gridiron. So when you talk about sports growing up, could you remind me of what time period this was when you were growing up?
Yeah, it was early 60s.
Okay.
I suppose. I graduated from high school in 1963. That really ages me. It's a long time ago, but it was an interesting era. I think there was a lot of protesting for equal rights and stuff like that. It was kind of on the verge of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and so we grew up it was a good time too, because it was pretty simple life.
Yeah.
There's no computers, no cell phones, there wasn't much. There was maybe, I don't even know if I had TV until I was maybe 10 years old or 11, and we'd watch Howdy Doody and that stuff, And so it was just, there wasn't else to do. We listened to the baseball on the radio.
Yeah.
And even I think that was done by ticker tape. They would have, and he hit a fly ball, it's gone, that type of thing. So it was just I think a real simple life. A lot of it was family, and then around the radio or TV in later life.
So you said you graduated high school in 1963. So be safe to say you remember JFK assassination.
Well, I know exactly what I was doing. I was working at a grocery store, and it just people came in the store crying that Kennedy has been shot or killed. I don't know if we knew at the time that he had died, but it was everybody broke down. It was
tragic.
Sad time in my life.
Yeah, and the Zapruder film wasn't released, I think, for about 12 years afterwards, I want to remember. So people didn't know how tragic it really was. I mean, Jackie being as close as she was to it, and I mean, it was just a horrible situation.
And then on TV would have been, was it Ruby that killed the assassin?
Yep.
So
Jack Ruby, I believe.
Yeah, we saw all that on live TV. So,
you remember watching that too?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I remember watching the funeral. That was, I remember when Bobby Kennedy got killed too, and
Martin Luther King.
I was in college, so yeah.
Very vivid then, I would assume.
Yeah.
Would you say though, of those three assassinations, like the JFK one was probably the most shocking? Of course, all of them are shocking, but that one was just with the sitting president.
I think so. Being a sitting president and being a young, vibrant president, and one that people really liked.
Mm-hmm.
They were the couple. They were the kind of a prince and princess of our country, and we enjoyed watching him when he'd go on TV or on the radio, and they'd have some of his live broadcasts, and it was always interesting and fulfilling to listen and watch.
Absolutely. Inspiring and cool communicator.
Yes.
I wish I could have been alive to have watched those live versions, but thankfully they got them tape recorded and they're on YouTube, so I can still enjoy them then. So still growing up, though, and listening to the radio and getting the was it 3 channels you guys had on TV when you were younger? Were you guys able to, watch certain professional sports? And if so, was there certain professional athletes you looked up to or tried to emulate your game after?
I think that the one thing that really sticks out to me would have been watching football in the fall and the Green Bay Packers, because that was our team. We didn't have the Vikings at the time, and Paul Hornung was he was the Marlboro man. After a hard-fought game, he would light up a Marlboro, and so cigarettes and alcohol were always on TV.
Yeah.
That was a constant deal, and I even smoked when I was young, and it's the worst thing I've ever done is for my health. But you had your heroes that were doing it, so it was one of those things that and the other people with like the Green Bay Packers, Ray Nitschke, middle linebacker, and there was a guy by the name of Chuck Baranaric. Excuse me, was the last two-way player. Never left the field.
Really?
I mean, it was amazing, and that was in the 60s. So, yeah, there was so football was really, I think, the sport that I really got to. And then we'd go to Minneapolis Millers, and they were fun, too. And then, of course, when the Twins came and the Vikings. So then another thing we did is we went to the Laker games at the old auditorium.
Yeah, at the Armory, right?
Yeah, Armory, yeah. I would watch George Mikan and Slater Martin, and I can't remember all of them names, but I can on a bench seat.
Yeah.
And that was my dad made sure that we were interested in sports.
Absolutely. I think people forget. I mean, now the Armory is that's one of the main concert venues of Minneapolis, but I mean that was one of the greatest early dynasties. I mean that preceded the Celtics and the Lakers.
Yeah.
Like that was the Los Angeles Lakers. I don't know if a lot of people know the Minneapolis Lakers transitioned into the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yeah,
and
they were world champs. I think repeating world champs.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was. Again, that was something you didn't see on TV, but you listened to it on the radio.
Absolutely. So when you talk about football, and that was kind of your sport, what position did you happen to play in football, and did you enjoy defense or offense more?
I was an offensive lineman, and I played outside linebacker, I believe, in high school. I wasn't fast enough probably to be in the secondary, and size-wise, I probably played at 170 pounds, but that wasn't uncommon back then. So people weren't as big as they are now. But, I think I was in the right spot. I really wasn't fast enough to be a back or nifty enough to be in the secondary. So football, like you said before, you have a place for just about everybody.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be real fast or real strong or real quick, but you have to have something that is valuable to the team. And anyway, my high school career was probably the most important thing in my whole life growing up, because you could go either way. I don't think I was the best kid in high school. Alcohol and tobacco was for everybody, and that was you could either go either way. You could be with the athletes or you could be with the rough crowd. And football kind of saved my life, because in 1962 we won the Lake Conference Championship, and there was one school in each of those towns of Edina, Hopkins, St. Louis Park, Richfield, Bloomington. So those schools had enrollments over 1,000, maybe up to 1,200 or 1,300. In like Robbinsville, I think it was the biggest school in the state, or maybe it was St. Louis Park at the time. And we had 20 guys out for football.
Really?
20.
Oh my gosh.
Well, there was the article, I just read it, said we had 25, but I could recognize 5 of those that never played. I mean, they were, so we would have half line scrimmages, and we tried to perfect what we were doing. But we had 2 outstanding players. Bob Haddorf was the Player of the Year in the state of Minnesota at the time, and my cousin was Dave Melcheski. He was the best football player I've ever been around. I mean, he should have been in the NFL, but
Really?
he decided not to after he played his college up at Morehead State, but anyway, after that, he was just an accountant, I guess, someplace, a CPA, and he tragically passed away at age 50. But tremendous athlete, and where I'm going with this is that after this season, the community had dinners. You had the Lions Club, the Kiwanis, Chamber. We had dinners every night. We'd go to a different dinner, and we went to the quarterback club, I think, in Minneapolis. Yeah, so they had a banquet down there. So we all, it was, Bill Brown was the guest speaker, and it was all this attention was given, and I just thought this is great, and it just kind of changed my life. And I didn't go to college after high school. I went to I got a job at Tonka Toys in Mound. That was the home place of the Tonka Corporation, and I worked there. And my buddies, two of them went to Morehead State, Greg Prine and Dave Malcheski, and they came back after maybe the first 2 weeks of practice, and he said, "You can play here. You're as good as any of these guys." So I quit my job, took the ACT test, went up to Morehead, and that was, well, I got a little story there. I was probably the last man on the roster. I didn't think anybody knew who I was, but my high school, one of the high school coaches and celebrities was Vern Gagne in Mount, and another high school coach was Ed Wasik, and they came up to Morehead State because they're going to start professional wrestling as a venue in the Fargo Civic Center. And they came to watch a JV game, and they listed the starters, and they said, "Mater." And I said, "Mater?" "Yeah, you got to start at middle linebacker tonight." And that was, I got to play. I had a great game. I started every varsity game after that for 4 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I came out of the blue. That was, again, a life-changing thing for me.
Way to seize the opportunity right there.
Yeah. Sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know, and you got to get a break.
That's true. There's some luck in life. The successful
Very much
people.
so.
I remember Tim Berg saying a lot of luck in life, and seems like not necessarily saying your skill was luck, but just getting that opportunity, and that's a great story right there. So you went to college and you played football, and it sounds like the transition from high school athletics to college athletics wasn't terribly difficult. There's some culture shock moving from Mound up to Morehead.
Not really. Mound was a western suburb, so I mean, I just thought maybe when we went away from home like that, I had to take a train up there because I didn't have transportation, and that's how you got around back in the 60s. And got off the train, and someone picked me up at the train depot and brought me back to the dorm, and there was a poker game going on. I got in on that and got some friends. And what I found there is that your lifelong friends are met in college, not necessarily high school. High school is, you could go back. You got a few that you're always chum with and stay in contact with, but the college friends are a lifetime. And the people that you played sports with.
Absolutely. I've experienced that firsthand my first year of college last year, and that's very true. Very true. Would you say that Morehead State's football was drastically different style of play compared to your high school team?
Well, I think everybody's bigger, faster, stronger when you go up a level. Like I said, we had great high school athletes, at least a number of them, because we did win. We were number 2 ranked team in the state that year. We were the mythical state champions back there. But that was special. I mean, we had some great athletes. And then you get up to Morehead State, and you had a whole bunch of them. And we were a good team. The scrimmaging was a little bit different, I think, because you had so many more players. And I think everybody's just a little bit, like I said, bigger and stronger, and you had to find your niche, how you're gonna play and where you're gonna play. And I went to the defensive side, and played nose guard and middle linebacker most of my time.
Did you like nose guard or middle linebacker?
Yeah,
more?
I could. I think I could. I could maybe sense or when the ball was going to be snapped, and I was quick to make contact, or we'd made a little blitz package, and so it was kind of raising havoc in there. And yeah, I think I found a home there. And then we went to a four-man front or even front, and I was a linebacker. So
nice.
Yeah,
that's something I definitely remember from playing at Albany. We had that where we'd have one of the inside linebackers. If you went to a five-man front, go down and play nose guard. So
yeah,
that's something maybe we'll touch up on
Sure.
When we get to Albany. But what was the most memorable moment you had while playing college football?
No, I don't. We won a couple of championships. So those are always big. I think always beating St. Cloud State was meaningful. One time we went up to University of Northern Michigan in Houghton. That's way up on the Northern Peninsula, and we had a good game there. I think we won the game, and then we got in the locker room, and the coaches said, "Nobody's going to shower. You got to get on the bus because there's a big blizzard coming," and we had to get out of there. And we stayed overnight in Ironwood, Michigan, and that was a hoot. Kind of road trips in college where the coaches just let you go. And I think I was over 21 at the time, so we went out and celebrated, I guess. And, so it's just some memories. I don't know if anything really stands out as being a tremendous thing. I played against a lot of good athletes. I had one guy in college, Mike Quirk. He was All-American a number of years, and he was just a tremendous running back. And you got guys like that. Bricker Johnson was a 6'5", 210-pound wide receiver that ran a 4.5, 4.6 40 back then. And
wow.
he should have been in the NFL too. I think he did try out for a couple of teams. So you had good athletes and good memories, but I don't know if one sticks out other than kind of the camaraderie that you had as a team.
Just all blends together to one good time right there.
I think so.
Yeah, well, that's great. Were there certain coaches you would say, whether it was high school or college, that properly demonstrated how to effectively lead a team?
Oh, yeah. I think my high school coach was tremendous, Bob Gove in Mound. I'm sure he's long gone, but he was a great leader. He had tremendous discipline, not only on the football field but in the classroom. You just didn't mess with Big Bob. And he was a great leader of discipline, fundamentals, and repetition. We ran our plays till we knew them, and I think that was my first lesson.
Yeah. So between high school and college athletics, you'd say just repetition, being organized, that sort of stuff were some lessons. Were there other lessons that stick out to you that high school or college athletics taught you?
I think you got to stay on course and try to do your best, be conditioned, and I think the other big thing would have been teamwork. Mm-hmm. Any team that I've ever been on that was good had that special feeling, and that feeling was that everybody belongs and everybody works as a unit, and I think that's in everything in life.
Absolutely. So transitioning now, you graduated at MSUM, and I know you went into the military eventually. How did that transition come about? Was there a gap between you graduating college and going into military, or was it bang bang?
Well, back then, you had Vietnam was on, and your college life was whatever you did. You went if you went to the student union, it was a protest. The SDS, Students for Democratic Society, were demonstrating against the war in Vietnam. That was probably unpopular at the time for my group anyway, because a lot of the players were veterans that came back and played, and so there was always conflict. And so then I graduated in '69, and I taught that year, 69, 70 in Jackson, Minnesota. I was a social studies teacher, and I got drafted in March, I believe. And then I got married in June. But I got married, teaching, drafted in that short time. And when you went into the service, you get drafted in the Army. Almost all of them were Army. The other ones were probably enlisted men, but they called it USA. You were a USA, so you were a drafted person rather than regular Army.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I got married in June, got left inducted in July, and spent 2 years in the Army.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what was your initial reaction when you got that that draft notice in the mail? Were you, there had been a lot of emotions you were feeling?
Well, I think the biggest one was in, I think, the 1969, maybe in December, the draft lottery.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of everybody was watching on the TV. They had a live lottery, and what they did is by birth date, and your birth date was up on a screen, and then you kept on dodging, looking, and mine came up 41. Okay, so then at the end of it, they said everyone with a number of, I think, to 270 or 250 was, you could be inducted immediately.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was called the Vietnam Lottery, and and so I was at 41. Shortly after that, I got my draft notice, and then I got a deferment to finish the year of teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like I said, we had planned to get married in June, got married, and left a month later.
So you'd say that being drafted is kind of what propelled you to get married then, before you had
yeah, kind of, because we had Carol and I, and you know her very well. We went together for like 4 years, so it's time to get married.
Mm-hmm.
And she was finishing her college, and so we needed to make a decision.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to lose her, and she probably maybe said, let's either get married or, I want, you're going to be gone, I'm going to be gone, all right, I'll be on my own. And so we did, and I think it was a good decision. She got to come with me various times. So
that's good. Yeah, I mean, one of the sweetest people I've ever met. So I think it was a good decision right there.
Yeah, I think so.
So you get drafted then. You go to basic training. Where was this conducted at?
Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. They said Fort Lost in the Woods in the state of misery. And it was kind of a tough, it was in August or July and August, so very, very hot. And then I don't know, if the basic training was supposed to prepare you for war, but it did not. I mean,
oh, really?
Oh my gosh, there was so much protesting going on. Like there was the Black Panthers that wanted to be separated from the other people and in the Army at that time. So that was a protest group. I mean, not everybody was in the Black Panther, but there was a lot of minorities in the Army.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was people that didn't want to fire their weapon, so they either got sent to be medics or were released dishonorably.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of protesting going on, and so it was you had to make a decision there. Are you going to join the protests, or are you going to be just a regular guy and go through and take your chances? And that's what I did. But the preparation was not. I mean, they always talked about going to Vietnam and doing this and that, but it wouldn't be something that I don't think we were prepared for. And I think that was one of the shortfalls of the Vietnam War, is that people went over there unprepared.
Yeah, and going over unprepared, I mean, my gosh, I can't imagine the mental state one would have to be in. I mean, imagine just going into a theater of war and you feel unprepared. That is going to be like demoralizing beyond belief.
Yeah, you had, you could fire your weapon. You all got certified in the M16, and they had some little hand-to-hand combat, but that was nothing to save your life or to go into a battle, I don't think. But Vietnam was it was an angry time in our nation when I would travel from basic training to home for a break. You got to airports, people were protesting. They called you baby killers, and
Oh my gosh.
I mean, it was terrible when you wore that uniform, and that's changed, because I think it's gradually changed, but 9/11 changed the whole feeling of our country towards veterans, towards fire departments, police, and everything. So it was, like I said, it was a rough time in our nation, but we got through it, and I'm proud to have served, and it was probably a good experience for me, in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure in the moment it had to have been just, I mean, very, like you said, tough time. Like, that is something you would hope your kids would never have to go through, something like that. And the division, I mean, people think America is divided right now, and there certainly is division in there, but it can certainly be a lot worse.
Yeah, I think so. You just see the division now. It's politically and maybe ideas, but back then it was a lot of things. It was race, it was war, discriminations, but we've come a long way as a nation. I think we're a lot better off.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're familiar with the movie Full Metal Jacket, I'm assuming, and the Stanley Kubrick film. If those listening aren't familiar, but it's a famous Vietnam War movie. Would you say that movie accurately depicted basic training during the Vietnam era, or not necessarily?
You know what? I've never paid that much attention to it. I've never watched a war movie of Vietnam.
Okay.
Deer Hunter, I think I watched.
Okay.
And I wasn't over in Vietnam I never saw action on it, so war action. So I don't know how people react to it, but I do know that people came back from there not wounded physically, but mentally afterwards.
Yeah.
There was a lot of PSD. There was people came back with drug problems. So there were a lot of things from the Vietnam War that probably filtered into our society.
Yeah.
And again, troubled time.
Certainly. And that's something that still the United States is dealing with the aftermath of the global war on terror. I saw a stat somewhere where it's like the deaths in Iraq. I forget the number exactly. Shame on me for not knowing the exact number, but the deaths compared to suicide after are just significantly higher than the direct combat ones, which is just such a shame in so many regards.
It's crazy. I go to the VA now for my health services, and it's every time you go there, they ask you how your mental health is, and maybe all physicians do that, but there's a real emphasis there. And in the last, I think in the Biden administration, Dennis McDonough he's a non-veteran, but he is the VA secretary, and he's done a tremendous job in making VA services available to a lot of people who didn't have them before. And there is a suicide hotline, and there's a lot of interviewing that goes on to make sure that people are in a good state.
That's good, yeah. And it's a shame it takes so many tragedies for something like that to happen, but nonetheless, it's good that it's happened sooner than later. So
for sure.
And I think McDonough is a St. John's graduate, if I'm not mistaken. How about that?
I've met him a number of times. He was Obama's chief of staff.
Was he actually?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Jeez, that's incredible. Central Minnesota getting represented well right there, I guess.
Yeah.
That's great. So you said you were deployed. You didn't serve directly in a combat zone in Vietnam. So was it Germany you were sent to?
Yeah, I got on orders for Vietnam. I was the company clerk at. I was based at in Colorado, and like a company clerk is a person that takes down names for levies. A levy is a list of people that are going someplace. So the Vietnam levy was. I was taking names, highlighting them in my roster, and I highlighted my own name, and I thought, oh my God, am I gonna? I asked, is there any way I can get out of that? And the guy said, no, we'll look at it. We were all buddies, And he said, no, you can't. So anyway, I came down for orders for Vietnam, went home, told my wife, she cried. And I said, well, let's go out for pizza. And we got in the car, and the dome light didn't come on, and the battery was dead. And I thought, oh, God. And I opened up the hood. Someone had stole our battery. So there we are. And we shed some tears. And then from that point on, then you go home. I came back here and went on our leave, and then I went to Oakland Army Base and stayed there for a week or so. And the all-volunteer Army was just starting. So as they, you got your fatigues and stuff to go to Vietnam, and then on the tarmac, which is a big, area out in Oakland Army Base, there's probably 6,000 to 10,000 people out there at a time, and you got to listen for your orders, and they listed, it was our social security number at the time, but your name, social security number was your Army number, and they said, you have order change, and we went in, and they said, you've been diverted to Italy.
Italy.
Yeah, so I thought, wow, well, that was a break. So anyway,
that's where
I got devoted, and we went to back, and then you got to go over to cross country. So we ended up in, I think, Fort Jackson, Carolina, and they didn't know what to do with us, and they went over to overseas, and there was just too many people that were in the Army that didn't need to be drafted at the time. And again, the war was de-escalating, I think, and all volunteer Army was getting some people in. So anyway, I ended up in Heilbronn, West Germany at the time, and I was there as a company clerk again. So I was sitting in the office one day, and the battalion commander called me in his office, and he said, I see you have a football background. And I said, yeah, I played college football, and and I was coaching when I was teaching that 1 year. And he said, we're having trouble with our high school team here. I'd like you to assign you temporary duty to be the football coach there. So I did, and they were, I think there wasn't I don't know if they were seniors, but they were like 15 to 18 years old, so they were high school kids, but there was a rule about after they were 18 you couldn't play or something like that. So, but anyway, they were undisciplined, and we lost our first game, I remember, 53-0, and we had a parent meeting, and I just said, these are the rules that we have to follow from now on. There's going to be discipline, or you're not going to be able to have a good team over here. And they were all dependent children from people that were lifetime servers in the service. They had their families over in Germany. So anyway, we got them going in the right direction, and we ended up winning the championship. So that was. Again, football probably saved my life a little bit, just like it did in high school.
Yeah, so, wow.
And college.
And again, just a fate, like churn of fate right there, too, to go from thinking of going to Vietnam, and then you get sent to Europe, and then you go the county clerk, right, you said, and then you get churned into a coach. Yeah. I mean, that's probably the best job the Army can give to someone.
Yeah, it was temporary duty, and that's what you would do, and you worked when the football season was over. I went back to my own company, and we lived off campus. My wife Carol was with me, and we lived in a farmhouse out in the country with a family, but in a separate quarters. And our entertainment, there was no TV, was listening to Armed Service Radio, and I think it was the longest football game. Or maybe it was Super Bowl back then. It would have been 1972 in February. They said, all U.S. Army personnel, you have to listen to halftime. There was a big announcement. Mm-hmm. So there was, they were letting people go early out of their service. So if you have when you're getting out and for the Army, and mine was July 29th, I think was my termination of service date. They said if you were anywhere from up to that date, up to August 1st, you had to get your dependents home right away because you are leaving, you're being discharged early. So my wife went home, and then we went, it was about a month later I got released, and I think it was it was probably the middle of March when I went home. So it was listening to a football game and listening to halftime, and everybody. That was a big celebration. You're going home.
I mean, such important events happen around football in your life. Wow, that is unbelievable. So when you're in Germany, West Germany during this time, and this is 25 years roughly after World War II.
Yeah.
What was that like with the citizens? What was the feeling like in that country? Was it shame? Was it demoralization? Motivation to change? What was that like?
Yeah, I think that there was a lot of there wasn't dissent against the Americans, but there was so many Americans over there. Every big town had a billets with the servicemen there, and you drove heavy equipment down the streets and stuff like that. So there might have been a little resentment, but the people that we met were they're very thankful for U.S. being there, and I don't know. Germany now is a great ally of the United States, and they still have servicemen over there, but not the number that they did. I don't know how many are in the Europe theater right now, but not like it was in the early 1970s.
Yeah, and I know I've heard horror stories with when the Russians during World War II are coming back to reconquer Germany and paying retribution for what the Germans did to them. There's no wonder so many people were thankful to be on the American side than the Soviet side, because
I think so. Back then it was East and West. So my company that I was in was a nuclear weapons company, and we had silos over on the Czech border that we would have to go to every once in a while, and everybody was armed and ready.
Mm-hmm.
So the nuclear war was just maybe a trigger away. So we've gotten over that too. So yeah, that was a interesting time, and I think Germany, it was thankful, and then when the Berlin Wall went down, I think it was unified, and the people over there right now, I think, like I said, are a great ally.
Absolutely. So, you've talked about the protests happening while you were in the Army and in college. Was that kind of your sentiment towards the Vietnam War, or what was your opinion of the Vietnam War while you were serving it? Has it changed over time?
Well, I was not. I don't know if I was anti-war. We just didn't know what to think. Every newscast you turned on, they gave the fatality report, how many Americans were killed, and it was over 50,000, I think, in that 10-year period that they were over there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's tragic, and it just, what's your future? We had the draft, right? Everybody, when you were 18 years old, you had to go to the draft board or to a bank and sign up for the selective service. So then you got a draft number, or you got excuse me, you went to got a physical, and you were classified as 1A or 4F or college deferment, which I had for a while, and then when the deferment ran out, then you got drafted. So I mean, you knew it was coming all the time. Did I protest? I don't think so. I just was not I was more against Vietnam than my father. My father was a World War II person. He was very patriotic, and all his buddies were, and they're all World War II veterans. And so that was another conflict. The young people were up against the kind of the older people with being loyal to their country, and but I think in the end, when you join, you can make a decision. Are you going to be American soldier, or are you going to be a protester or draft dodger? And you just make that decision. You go with the flow, and you make the right decision.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, looking back on that whole military experience, what would you say was the most important lessons that you were taught or you experienced there?
No, that's a tough question. I don't know if the value I got out of that again was I think the camaraderie that you had with your fellow soldiers. Again, teamwork was very important. You have to abide by the rules. I mean, you had to if you didn't do what they were supposed to do, be on time and be loyal to your service, your branch, your country, you were in trouble. I was again the company clerk, so I had if people got in trouble, they had a thing like Article 15. You write them up, and there'd be a penalty. You'd get docked in pay, or you'd have to maybe even sometimes they went to the brig, So just follow rules. And I think one of the things was being on time and showing respect for authority.
Yes.
That would be my biggest lesson.
Good lessons to learn, certainly. And that's probably very common lessons learned throughout the military. So transitioning now to coaching high school football, how did you become the Albany head football coach?
Well, I again, after I got done with the service, I went back to Jackson, Minnesota, and that was a very good football program. I coached there for 10 years. I was the head coach 3. And Jackson went into, from being a powerhouse in maybe 75 or 76, kind of didn't win a game. The biggest fear is fear of failure. And I wasn't the head coach, but I took over the program then in 77, I believe, and we won 3 games. And the following year, won 3 games, and we made a lot of progress. And the next year, we won 3 games, but the sophomores were very good, and I had to make a decision because I knew that we had the right things going. The program was building, and I left for Albany in 1980, got the job here, and 2 years later, they were state champs at Jackson. So maybe it's because of the new coach, but I don't think so. It's just we had really the things rolling in the weight room and all that stuff. So the trend was going up in Jackson right now. Is probably Jackson County Central is a very powerful football team in southwestern Minnesota, and as well as Albany.
Absolutely. When you came to Albany, did you feel pressure when replacing legendary coach Pete Herges? And could you just elaborate on who Pete Herges was as a man and as a coach?
Well, Pete Herges started the program here, and you would have to say he's the father of the football program at Albany. He started in 1954. I think he started he was just a young guy out of the military also. He was in the Korean War era, and when he started it here, they probably didn't have enough players, so he went around and recruited. He and the other coaches went out to farm kids and tried to get them to play football, and so he didn't have great success either right away. I think they were losing seasons, maybe 54 and 55, and then all of a sudden they start winning, and then the tradition was there, and for the next 27 years he was the leader of the football program in Albany, and then he was the athletic director, and I was very impressed with him when I interviewed. And when I came here, this is interesting, I interviewed in front of the entire school board twice. And that doesn't happen for all the teachers. When you get interviewed, you might go through the administration and maybe a couple people and maybe a student or two and another teacher that interview you and in your teaching discipline, but then they make the decision. Well, this was a board decision. So that's the first thing. When I interviewed there, I thought, boy, this is a very important job.
Yeah.
And then when I got the job, I moved here, and that was right after the teacher strike here in 1980. So there was a little bit of conflict in the community, but I was new. I didn't know too much about it, and got the first year we lost the first 2 games, and I thought, boy, and there was a lot of pressure in the community. You know, what's this guy? He's not going to be able to win. And then we won 8 in a row, and we lost Montevideo in the state semifinals. So it was a very successful first year. And I think when I interviewed with Pete, he said, unless you're really a poor coach, you're going to win the conference the next 3 years. And that was my goal. When I interviewed for the board, they asked me what my goals were, and I said, to win 100 games and to win a conference championship. And that was basically it. And one of the board members said, well, at the rate you're going, it's going to take you 30 years to win 100 games. And I said, well, we'll see what we can do about that.
Absolutely. Now, I've heard rumors after this first 2 losses of your first season, you woke up Saturday morning with some for sale signs in your front yard. Is that true?
Yeah, I think there was I think there was a lot of that throughout the years. One time there was a for sale sign, and there was some. Well, we did have some people would come up to practice and said, "You better get it straightened around." And there was a couple of very vocal fans that turned out to be good allies of myself and the coaching staffs, mm-hmm. But they were pretty hard to take at first and a little confrontational. And when you put together a string of wins, everybody is fine with that. So I did have some for sale signs in the yard, but it turned out, I think my assistant coach put them there. So, and another player's dad that were friends, and it was a big laugh about it. So.
Okay, well, that's good. Yeah, I remember that reminds me of the JFK quote after the Bay of Pigs was that victory has 100 fathers, but defeat is an orphan. Mm-hmm. And that is a lonely feeling right there, especially when you got people yelling at you.
Well, fear of failure, again, was my big motivator, and maybe it still is. And whenever I do. But again, I came to this town, there was 20 plus seniors that are going to play football. When you get 20 seniors on your football team at this level, you should be successful. Mm-hmm. And that was always my goal then, to have 20 seniors. And sometimes we had 25, and sometimes we had 80 kids out for football in 10, 11, and 12. So the program really built, and after those that first year, we were rated number 1 in the state many times, and had a lot of success. And I think the foundation that Pete laid is the foundation that I try to emulate, and hopefully did for the next 23 years.
Absolutely. How would you describe your style of football when you were coach at Albany? Did you build upon what you learned at Moorhead State, or even at Mound High School, Jackson, even in the Army? Did you incorporate a lot of things, or did you kind of build off what Pete had already?
I think the foundation is, I think it's universal. It's built on discipline. You have to get the attention of the players, and you have to repeat. And one of the things that you go to a lot of coaching clinics too. Well, I went to one, and the guy said, if you don't get anything else out of this whole clinic, just remember this, that the mother of execution in sports is repetition. Mm-hmm. So repeat it, repeat it, repeat it. And that's what I did. That was kind of wherever I coached, it might have been, we didn't have a big playbook, or we didn't have a lot of complicated things, but I think the players knew their assignment, and if they knew their assignment, they could execute it, and if all 11 did it, you're going to be pretty good.
Absolutely.
So that's the thing that you got to take away, is that the kids have to know. They have to know their assignment. They have to execute their assignment and not get a penalty, and you're going to be a pretty good team.
So clear communication from the leader is key in that, knowing the assignments.
Yeah, I think so. There was another thing that when you get to do an activity or you're coaching a team, the only things that really happen are disorganization and chaos, and everything else then is a result of leadership. So someone has to be the leader, and someone's got to be the flag carrier, and hopefully in my 23 years as the football coach here, demonstrated that. And then again, it was a lot of great athletes, a lot of great coaches in my time here, and very close-knit coaching staff. I don't think there was any dissension ever with that loyalty there. Again, chain of command, it was always important, and then maybe that's part of the military thing too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, build upon that. So when I interviewed Coach Kleinschmidt, he talks about one of the most important things that you taught him when he took over your role was to create a core coaching philosophy. Don't stray away from it. When you became a coach, was there a philosophy that you had in mind already, or was it something that you kind of built upon year over year through experience?
I think there's certain things that are going to be constant in a organization, coaching, whether you're coaching or teaching or whatever. Part of it is it's discipline. You have to, whatever you have is the discipline. It's not being a rah disciplinarian type person, but you got to have the players come on time, be on time, very important. Have a good team feeling, really important. And I have my philosophy. I have it written out there, and it's something that I always went by, and it's repetition. If the players didn't know what to do, you have to repeat it, and you repeat it and repeat it until it's done correctly. And I think that it's not an exaggeration, but we had very few plays, and every one of them were run 5,000 times before we had our first game. Mm-hmm. We just repeat. And I probably got criticized for that, but right now when I get together with some of the, when I'm down at the golf club or whatever, some of these old players, they'll talk about, well, I remember running the 22 blast 27 times in a row against Fergus Falls, and they just could not stop it, and we just laughed. And you send in the plays, and the guy would come in with the play, 22 blast, wing right, 22 blast, or wing left, 22 blast. So we ran it over and over and over. And the kids, maybe they'd like to throw in the ball a little more, but I think in the long run they understood that you had to be physical, you have to know what you're doing. Football is blocking and tackling, and you have to be good at that. Mm-hmm. So that's the other thing. And this was always a really important thing to me. When you're in college, you had a lot of drills, bull in the ring, tackling drills, and just beat the crap out of one another. And I could never understand that, why you would do that. So we never did any drills. I don't know what you were like in your high school career, but I don't think they did a lot of one-on-one drills. No blocking, no tackling. Even in our practices now at the high school, I was up there yesterday watching. All they do is 11 on 11, play the game of football, and repeat, and keep it simple, and don't injure a kid in practice. That because there's enough chance in a game, and that was kind of our mantra. And then the biggest thing I think with game preparation, you had to know where they're. We did a lot of scouting back when we didn't have film. We'd send people scouting. Your dad did that for years for me. Mm-hmm. And we would have a scouting report, and you would know. I'd have them say, well, where do you think they're the weakest? And you kind of made your game plan to take advantage of where their weak area was. And once you find a weak area, keep on hitting away at it. Mm-hmm. So until they stop you. And I guess that's, in a nutshell, my philosophy. And just work with the kids, the players that are going to be on the field Friday night. And the others, not so much of an emphasis on it. They can learn the plays, but just have work with your number ones until they have it for sure. And then maybe you could have each one teach one too, where, if a guy doesn't have a good stance, as an offensive lineman, have a varsity guy work with them and stuff like that. So a lot of peer tutoring too in my philosophy.
And that teaches a lot of leadership for the players too, especially the varsity players. If you're have that responsibility upon them to help the younger guys to improve their game. And I know also being a product of or someone who went through the Albany football program, when you're a younger player, being on scout defense is one of the best learning tools that you can have, because you know what it's like to be on the receiving end of those great blocks and athletic players. Yeah. And that is a physical reminder as much as a mental reminder.
I think a lot of maybe there's a little resentment there that the sophomores are kind of the blocking dummies out there in a way, but the sophomores come in as pretty tenderfoot players, and when they leave, more than likely they're going to be undefeated or maybe one loss on the JV, but they're experienced football players when they're done with their season, and they take a lot of pride in that. So I think that's, again, part of the program that's been built over the years. And so it's if you don't do a lot of drills, you do 11 on 11, everybody's learning, everybody knows the system, and then you have a great team feeling too. Everybody belongs.
Absolutely, yeah. And that was, when I was a senior too, that was one of my biggest goals as a captain, was try to make sure everyone felt like they had a role on the team. I mean, because it's obviously football, it's a huge thing when you're in it, but it's not like when you're on your deathbed, you want to be looking back and being like, oh, my high school football team, like that's what I lived for. So, but it's still important in the moment, and you want to make sure everyone feels that importance too.
That's right.
When you were coaching at Albany, what were some of the most successful teams that you had?
Well, I had 2 state championship teams. That doesn't necessarily mean that they were the best teams, but I think they would probably be right up there. I think 89, we had Willie Seiler as a quarterback, and he was a great quarterback. He went on to St. John's to be an All-American. We had different guys in the backfield. Wimmer, he was really good, and there was a Gable, hard runners, and offensive line was very good. There was we had some players there that we knew that we were good. I remember Bill Krogan, a longtime assistant, said, "Boy, we got 18 players. We can almost platoon. We are good." And I said, "Well, we'll see." And so anyway, we opened with Victoria that year, and my big pregame speech was to be up at 14-0 at halftime, and we got in at halftime. We were up 41-0. We knew that we were good. And, we hardly got scored on all year, and most of our starters didn't play in the second half, so we were really good. And I think we were probably the best team in Minnesota.
At all classes?
At all classes. There was only one above us. We were A, and Double A was Burnsville that year, and they were nothing special. They won the championship, but I think we could have played with anybody. So that was really a good team.
And that was 89?
1989, yeah. And then 97 was another state championship team. And my son Nate played, he was center, and Ross Denny at quarterback, John Schiffler, middle linebacker. I mean, these are all guys that, they played hard. It was Brian Ritter at fullback. We were very good. But we got beat by Melrose that year in homecoming. And that was I think it's most people have ever seen at an Albany football game. You used to have that bridge that went across from the road to the school, and that was lined with people, and they were all over, everywhere watching. There must have been, 10,000 people here. I know that's probably an exaggeration, but there was a lot of people.
Like it,
yeah, and we got beat. I think it was a real close game, but. And the next game, we almost got beat by Long Prairie, and we had really a good team. And at halftime, there was maybe everything was a heated discussion, and we turned the corner. And then that was game 7 or 8, and then we started the playoffs, and then we met Melrose for the championship, the section championship, and I think it was 39-0 at halftime. So we corrected ourselves, and we ended up being very good, and went on to we played Becker at the quarterfinals at Albany. Brutal football game, and my best halftime ever preparation was that game. We went into the wrestling room, and just everything was silent. We didn't have a first down the first half. I just said, "Man, I don't have anything for you. What are we gonna do?" And one of the guys said, after a long silence, he said, "Well, if we split the end, the nose guard goes over into the A gap, so we can run a 35." So I put that on the board. And then the split receiver said, it was Sam Rothstein, he said, "When I split out, that corner plays way off of me." He said, "I think we can run a stop, with a quick pass."
Mm-hmm.
And we had good quarterback, Rothstein. And then I think Troy Hofferth, he was our All-State running back. He said, "Well, you can run the 35 or 36 dive. We can run a 24 counter."
Mm-hmm.
So I said, "Okay." Then the referee knocked on the door and said, "It's time to go, guys. You don't want to get a penalty." So we went out, got the ball. We ran dive, threw out to the wide receiver for a pretty good gain. Ran a 24 counter for a touchdown. And now we're up 7-6. And went on to beat them pretty handily. Not handily. It was a brutal game, but there again, let the players decide how to figure out something, and I think we kept our mouth shut, and they found a solution. And again, it was a pretty simple one, just blocking, tackling, and doing the right thing at the right time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and sometimes, it's good, obviously, for the coach to know most of the answers, but they're not going to know all the answers. And sometimes the people that know the best answer are the ones that are down in the trenches, that see it. It's right in front of them.
After high school, I went out at St. John's, and I coached there 15 years, and I learned a lot from John Ghilardi, too. But some of the same things were probably the reason why I got the job in Albany, because when I interviewed, we talked about 11 on 11, not hurting a kid in practice. And these are all St. John's, John Ghilardi, the mantra that he had of just limited drills, no individual tackling and all that stuff. And so as halftime, he would pull up a chair, and you would think, boy, we're really behind here. What are we gonna do? He would just sit there and listen to the players, and then put things up on the board and say, "Okay, boys, let's go. You got the tools. Let's go." Everything was so calm, and I think if you're going into battle, it's a lot better to be calm and collected, and have knowledge of what you're gonna do and execute it, than having chaos.
Yeah, and that spreads from football to war to business and life.
Everything, yep.
And for people who don't know John Ghilardi, that is the all-time winningest coach in not only D3 football, but all of college football, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
I think he was over 400 wins in his career.
Yeah, I think there was, I know 409 was the big one when in 2003, I think, or 4. He became the winningest coach, and they had a big celebration there. But he coached another 10 years with multiple wins, so he got over 500 wins, and nobody will break that.
No.
Because you can't. He coached for 60 years.
Yeah, I think it was at 64, or it might even been like the 50s when he started.
He would come out in street shoes, and when it was cold, I'd have my big boots on and gloves and foot warmers, and he would just come out there, and his he had a parka on, but he could withstand the cold when he was 92 years old. I don't understand that, but the guy, he was phenomenal, and he was a disciplinarian in his own way. He just he treated kids well, and he would open up all his. We'd always have like after the game, instead of practicing on Monday, they always had 2 days off, Sunday and Monday. But there was a team meeting, and he would get up there and start off with a story, a joke, had everybody in tears, laughing, and then he'd get serious about underperformance. And if you ask any of the players that played out there, he would run the play over and over and over when a guy screwed up. Mm-hmm. He said, "You're not playing anymore. You're done until you can do the right thing." And so he was kind of brutal in that way, but it's just the point of you got to do the right thing. You're a team player, and if you can't do the right thing, you can't play. So I learned that lesson there too.
Yeah, and he's just a huge figure at St. John's University. I mean, I just know growing up, you go to those games and his presence is still felt even though he's passed away, I think it was 5 years ago roughly, around there, and he still is just like he's the Pete Herges of St. John's football, it almost seems like.
Yeah, he's a legendary figure, and when he would give talks, he always say about the same things about teamwork, leadership, being. He was really a stickler about being on time and representing your school in a professional way, and representing the team and community. And he was always so proud of the people that came out of that St. John's University and the high-powered people that are in all professions, whether it be medical or the business, or like Dennis McDonough and the politics, but he sent people out with the lessons of life, I think.
Yeah, and another notable person graduated from St. John's. I forget his name, and again, it's shame on me for not remembering his name, but he was on Flight 93, 9/11, and one of the main dudes who helped take down the hijackers, which could have gone into the Capitol.
Yeah, I think Burnett was probably his last name.
Yeah, they had a ceremony for him at one of the games, but I just remember, that is the ultimate sacrifice right there. Sacrificing yourself so others don't perish with that on that terrible day. So yeah, a lot of class acts coming out of St. John's, that's for sure. Shifting back more towards Albany, it was true you were the athletic director and the head football coach at the same time. How did you manage to complete those two roles simultaneously, and how did you not prevent yourself from prioritizing football over the other sports? Because that seems to be a difficult challenge right there.
I would think that people probably thought I did prioritize football over it, but that would be common feelings. Mm-hmm. But I think I try to empower the head coaches to be in charge of their programs, and to be have a strong advocate for their program, and I think for the most part they did that. I did that for 15, 16 years, and I don't know how I did that. I really don't, being both. But it was probably a lot of sacrifices at home here too. But it was a big job, and you had to be there. You had your presence in a contest at night, or I'd leave early in the morning, open up the weight room at 6 o'clock in the morning for some athletes, and then maybe stay until 10 o'clock after a basketball game was over with, and then repeat the next day. Mm-hmm. So it was a tough deal, but I don't know if football was always important for me, and I'm gonna be the advocate for it, and you're the flag carrier as the head coach, so I imagine it did get maybe overemphasized, but I tried not to, and again, I try to make the other coaches the head of their program, and I could do everything that I could possibly do to make their program successful. And I want to say that from 1989 to 2003, Albany all sports were really pretty good. Mm-hmm. So I don't think anybody suffered because I was the head football coach.
That's good. That's very good. Yeah, and it seems like you had delegate authority to the head coaches, because it's impossible to have if you're trying to control each and every program with your head football coach role at the same time. So maybe another lesson right there, knowing how to delegate.
Yeah, I think the individual coaches had to have leadership, and we tried to get the right coaches for them. Sometimes that was difficult. Maybe a program didn't have enough coaches, but we really had some real strong basketball and volleyball coaches over the years, and baseball was always really strong. So track program and cross country, they're all pretty good. So when programs are pretty good, the student athletes behave pretty well in school. And I think Steve Dooley used to say that what he liked about the fall sports, he said we'd get into the first quarter was just about over, and maybe the football team is still playing, and the kids are all pretty good, and might be going into the state tournament in volleyball and football, and all of a sudden you're almost halfway done with the school year, and everything was riding pretty smooth. So anyway.
Yeah, it's always a treat when you got all programs firing on all cylinders. It reminds me of, I think it was 2020, and this is when COVID year. If it was 2020 or 2019, I forget. I think it was 2020. But I think there was a point when the football team, the volleyball team, the girls basketball team, and the guys basketball team didn't have a loss between those four programs until February of 2021. It was just everyone was winning.
That was probably a state championship team that Mike Kleinschmidt had that got cut short by COVID.
Yeah, and it's just a shame. And I remember my brother's senior year, they played Piers. It was 2015. Piers at St. Cloud State, star player, one of the star players, Taylor Foray, I think breaks his ankle or breaks his foot on the second play of the game. He was the quarterback and the free safety, and the backup quarterback comes in. He threw a touchdown, got called back for offensive pass interference, and the running back Kyle Beer ran for a touchdown, got called back for holding, and we ended up losing 9-0. And people always said that was the state championship game. Whoever won that game would have won it all. So. That's life, though.
Yeah, sometimes you win those, sometimes you don't, and that's why, it's it's what the greatest teams were. Maybe those two state championship teams weren't the greatest, but they had probably the fortune enough to maybe their competition wasn't quite as good, or they didn't run against a very good team, or the very good team. Stumbled there a little bit and maybe didn't have their best performance, and the team moves on. So sometimes you got a great team and you run up against a great opponent and you lose. And that's part of the game too, and that's part of life.
Yes, it
you
is.
Win some and lose some, and that doesn't mean that your effort wasn't there.
So people know, I've talked about it before on this podcast, Albany, I think, has had, since Pete Herges took over, maybe 5 losing seasons since the mid-'50s in their football program. Why do you think Albany has had such a consistently solid program over the decades?
Okay, well, coaching staffs. I think you look at over the long haul, there was some really meaningful coaches. Ron Jewell was a lifetime coach here with Pete Herges and me for a while, and Bill Krogman and Brian Bierbaum and Mike Kleinschmidt, Dick Cady. I'm going to forget somebody there, but they were just all instrumental. Players loved them. They always had a good feeling when you leave practice at night. And you remember the coach's office door was always open, and
yes, it was.
Players would come by and say, "Good night, coaches," or "Hey, have a good dinner out there," or whatever. And so there was always a feeling of mutual respect. The foundation was laid. I had a losing season, and it was a brutal one. We had some players that were ineligible at the beginning of the year, and I didn't play them for the first couple of games, and we won those games handily, and I started bringing those players in, and we started to lose. And we lost, I think we were 4-5 that year. That was my only losing season. I think it was 94 or 94. But then we went on to be in the state tournament every year up to the next 7 years. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we recovered, but fear of failure was a great motivator for me. I said it before. When you have a losing season, you want to make sure that you don't have them back to back. I think Pete had a couple at the beginning. Mike Kleinschmidt maybe had one.
I think he did 2012. I think it was when my oldest brother was a senior. I think they had a losing year that year.
Yeah. But the losing year might have been 4-5 or 5-6. You know,
yeah.
Sometimes
it was
got to the section
on the fringe. Yeah.
You get to the section championship game with a losing record. I know one year we had a 6-4 season, and we lost to Litchfield and Rocori. We lost to Litchfield 3 times, or Rocori 3 times.
Really?
And yeah, we played each team in the conference twice.
Mm.
But anyway, yeah. So that was, and then we played them in the playoffs. And it was. But you know why the foundation is laid. The community loves winning football games.
Mm-hmm.
The venue is a good one. People like to come to the games. The school atmosphere is good. When you come right out the door from the locker room to the football field, I think that's pretty advantageous. And it's a hard place to play for the opponents, and let's keep it that way.
That's right. The sacred acre, as Kleinschmidt calls it.
Yeah.
Sacred acre. Another important foundation or legacy of Pete Herges is the term Purple Pride. How would you define Purple Pride?
Well, it's doing the right thing, being on time, being a team player, having a great attitude, being again doing the right thing in school, on the field, and in your family, and trying to just be a good person, and having a lot of pride in your school, your community, and you are representing your school with everything you do, and I think that's what Purple Pride is. I know when I think it was Red McCombs became the owner of the Minneapolis Vikings, they had Purple Pride, and people around here were really mad because that's an Albany saying, Anyway.
Got to cite your sources right there, Vikings. Yeah. Do you know the history of that term on how Pete came about coining it?
Well, it was really strange here. When I came, we had white T-shirts, but everything was dyed purple. Our practice pants were dyed purple. Our jock straps were purple. T-shirts were purple. Everything, all the undergarments were purple. So that's where I think it all started. It just, Purple Pride. You have, it's just our mantra. That was it. You just got to live by being, having a lot of pride in your team and your community, and Pete labeled that, and it's stuck ever since.
It certainly has stuck, absolutely. So my final question I have when it comes to Albany football, when you reflect back on your career there, what was your proudest moment, would you say?
I guess just I don't know if I have one thing that would really stand out. I just I think that having the players when you come back into the community, go down to the golf course, and some of these old guys, they're old guys now. I guess some of them are close to 60 that I coached, and it's they still call me Coach Mater, and I said, "Oh, it's Jim now." And they said, "No, it'll always be Coach." So that's I think there was some respect there, and that's mutual for all the players that we've had over the years. And I guess I'm proud of what the 23 years here meant to me, to my family, to the community, and now as an old guy going into the community and having the respect of those people that played for me, I think that's really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great legacy to have left. That is for sure. So we touched up on St. John's football, and I believe you were the offensive line coach there. Is that correct?
Yeah, kind of. Well, they didn't really have. Again, you did you maybe had 15 minutes to work with the athletes on stance starts and stuff like that. And I would do that as, I was a stipend coach, so I wasn't a full-time paid coach there, but, I got a decent salary, but you'd go out and they would start with kicking, and then during that 10, 15 minutes, I'd have the offensive line. I'd go through stance starts, footwork, stuff like that. And then we'd do 11 on 11 for the rest of the practice. So I didn't have a lot of time to do it, but I worked with the second offense all those years as we'd have a game plan. And you have a list of plays that you're going to run, and you had a 3x5 card that if it was something new, you'd show the players, just like kind of we did in Albany with big cards.
Mm-hmm.
And then you would just execute, and then as John got it, John was, Glardy was the line coach. He did all the stuff with the offensive line, and he just said, why don't you just take over? Mm-hmm. So that was after maybe 5-6 years there, and so I would watch films, evaluate players, and try to get the right guys in the right spot, and make sure that, and then we would watch films, and I got a kind of a sideline there. I had Ben Eli, who played at St. John's, was All-American center. He started there as a defensive end. Had a wrist injury, so redshirted for a year, and then the next year he was a defensive end, and maybe the fifth guy to go in. So he's not going to get any playing time. A great athlete. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but they just had so much depth. And then our center, it was a weak position. I knew Ben from being in Albany was a pretty good center. So I asked him if he would switch to center, and he was very reluctant. I don't know if I would like that. I don't know the offense. So I asked him again. Went out to lunch with him, and I said, we really need you. And this was the start of his probably sophomore year eligibility-wise. So he had a couple of years after that left, and he decided that, okay, I'll do that. I spent a whole week with him just going through the offense, and he was asking questions. He's a brilliant guy. And so that Saturday, we're playing Eau Claire, Wisconsin. I believe it was Eau Claire. It was our opening game. Very first series, the starting center gets a knee injury. Now Ben Eli, who has been not even a starter, goes in and finishes the game at center. Never had a burp. I mean, he did really good. Mm-hmm. So the next game, where I think that was at Eau Claire, and we were in Wisconsin, and Ben was the starting center, and we beat them. It was a great game. They were a very good team. We get back to watch the film, and now John Glardy is retired, mm-hmm. but he comes in and watched films, and he said, I want to say that this was the best center position play I have ever seen in all the years that I coached.
Wow.
For Ben Eli. I thought, wow, what a compliment. So Ben went on to be maybe a 3-year starter, but it might only be 2. I can't remember for sure, but to be an All-American. Yeah. And what a success story. And so there again is getting the guys in the right spot, mm-hmm. at the right time, and let them play to their abilities.
Was there any other certain teams or players that really stood out that you worked with or were able to be part of the team with when you were at St. John's? I don't know. Was there a national championship won during your time?
I did not. It was year before I started there in 2003. They won the national championship, and I started in 2004. We played in a lot of semifinal games. I think one of the last games, Jackson Erdman was the quarterback. We were playing down in Texas. we're playing down in, I can't remember the name of the town now, but we were playing the semifinal game, and we were down at halftime, and we came roaring back, and Mary Hardin Simmons,
Mm-hmm.
and no, Mary Hardin Baylor, and then we lost right at the last play of the game. And it was a bitter defeat. It was my last hurrah there. I would know I was going to be done after that. And it was a brutal game, but we thought maybe that we had a national championship caliber team there. We had all the right ingredients, and we played really good, but they were just a little bit better, and they ended up beating Mount Union handily that year. So we could have, should have, maybe could have, but we didn't.
As is life, though.
Yeah. So there's just a lot of great athletes, and a lot of the players you get to know them. I remember having a young guy that he was having trouble we needed someone to take over at the right tackle spot, and the guy there John didn't care for him as a player. He said, we got to have someone. So they bring someone over from the defensive side. That was the way that it wasn't necessarily a number two guy on the offensive would come in. It would always be someone from the defense, the guy that can't play there, kind of like a Ben Eli, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So he came over, and the tackle at the time spent all his practice time telling him, this guy, each one teach one, how to, you know, what you have to do, how to be a good player at that. The guy turned out to be an All-American.
Really?
Yeah, he played 2 years. Now he's an orthopedic surgeon, and we stay in contact. So that's the cool thing. You see some of these guys after playing a St. John's golf tournament sometimes, and you see all the old players that you coach at St. John's and how successful they are, and it's really a rewarding thing for me, and it kind of fills up your pride when you see that.
Absolutely. I mean, you always want them to be successful on the field, but most importantly, you want to be successful off the field too. And
for sure.
That's great. So it's true you spent some time coaching over in Europe. How did that come about?
Okay. I had my college roommate at Morehead State was a college coach at DePage, junior college in Chicago area, and they were national champions in the scholarship division of the junior college. So he was very successful. He's the one that we got the fist defense from. He would come up here and installed it.
Oh, that guy. Okay.
Yeah, Joe Roman was his name. Okay. So after his college days, he went over to Europe and coached in Germany. And he did that for like 20 years. And after I retired from I was still at St. John's, in fact. He said, I'm taking a job in Hohenems, Austria, which is right on the Bodensee and Lake Constance in Austria, beautiful, right in the mountains. Where you want to join me there? I need an offensive coordinator. So I asked my wife, and she said, go for it. Let's do it. So that was 2000, maybe 10. And I went over there. We had a pretty successful year. We had players from all over Europe, but we would have 6 Americans on our team. They were called imports. They had to have a big A on their helmet and on their back of their jersey to make sure that they knew you can only have so many on the field at a time. You could have 2 or 3, depending on what league you were in, of these imports on the field at a time. So most of the players were Germans or Europeans. Anyway, we went through the season, and then at the end of the season, he kind of got in an argument with the team president, and he got fired. And I took over as head coach and did that for 3 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I had, the offensive line. That's what I worked with mostly. not so good. I had a 49-year-old center. He had a great shotgun snap, but he couldn't block anybody. I hope this doesn't go overseas to him, but great guy. Great experience for him to be our center, but we'd have our quarterbacks were from the United States. I had a couple kids from Illinois College that were wide receiver and quarterback that were very good. They were all Americans here.
Mm-hmm.
Had a nose guard from Florida and a middle linebacker that played at Florida State. And wide receiver or a defensive back and wide receiver and punter that played for SMU. So those were my 6 imports at the time, and they were pretty good. They're Division I players. They just weren't good enough to get to the NFL, but they were really good players compared to the Europeans. Now everybody recruited players like that, and we thought we were really good, and then we played a team from, I think it was Bern, Switzerland, that had the backfield from Louisville. Those 3 guys,
really?
Quarterback and running back and wide receiver were all the Louisville All-American. I mean, they were really good, and they finished the season, and of course we lost to them. We could defend them, but we couldn't catch them. We had them cornered, and then they would just run for a touchdown. It was pretty frustrating. But then I think they ended up in the Canadian League or someplace. But typically, Europe football was the last stop. I mean, that was, you were over there to travel around Europe on the dime and to see Europe and get that experience. And the players that I had there are, again, we keep in contact with a lot of them, and it was a great experience. My wife was over there for the summer. Normally we went over in March or February and came back in July.
So it's pretty quick, but still,
it was
quality time.
Yeah, and we played 1 year in the Central European League, so we traveled all over. Went to Budapest and Belgrade, Serbia, and Ljubljana, Slovenia, all over Germany. And then next year we played in the Austrian League, and that was more Vienna and the big Graz and the bigger towns in Austria. And then the final year, we played in the Swiss League, so we traveled all over Switzerland. And sometimes by bus, sometimes by plane, but a lot of times it was you'd go to a game, like we played in Zurich and we had a good game. On the way home, the bus driver would sell beer. So the players would have to put €1 or €2 into a little cup, and he had a cooler right where he was driving. And so sometimes if we had a good game, I'd buy all the beer on the bus and put it in the aisle, and then they would sing songs on the way home. And it was quite a hoot.
That's the most European thing I've ever heard right there. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, they would celebrate, and that was always part of my deal. Always celebrate victory, and sing the school song after a victory, and we sure did that a lot of times in Europe too. They would have their big song that they wanted to sing on the way home, and it was fun.
That's great. That sounds like such a memorable experience.
It was kind of a highlight of my coaching career, actually.
I believe it. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's one that kind of goes, I think some people know about it, but it's not like the first thing that comes to mind for people that are familiar with your career. But it's a shame, because that's quite a moment.
It was just a good thing. Again, kind of lucky that I became the head coach there, but I would always have an assistant coach that was at St. John's. Charlie Welsh went over there, but he was backup quarterback and offensive. He knew the offense real well, so it was pretty easy for me to be the line coach, and he was the offensive coordinator. So we had your coaching staff was I had one American and the rest were German, or one other was German. But most of the guys would teach each other. So there again, each one teach one and try to get the job done.
Transcends cultures and oceans right there.
Yeah, that's right.
That's awesome. Well, I have one last question for you. We're coming up on an hour and 40 minutes, if you can believe it. But my last question would be, what advice would you give to young people today?
Oh, well, one thing is to, have a great attitude, be on time. I think being a team player is harder and harder for this era of young people. There's a lot of individualistic things that kind of sidetrack them. Stay away from screen time as much as possible, even though I'm saying that I'm on all the time, but it becomes a disruption rather than, I think, a positive thing in some people's life. I think sit down and eat as a family. That's very important. I think that was a childhood memory that I had. Dinner was served at 5:30 every night. You better be there. And, if you talked about the day, that was good. But most of it was just spending family time together. And I think that's a hard thing to do this era. Yeah, keep everybody together. And if you have anything going on, and as you become parents later in life, is to have a strong family bond.
Absolutely. I mean, wise words from a wise man. Thank you very much, Jim. I appreciate it.
You got it.
Thank you for listening to Youthful Perspectives. I hope you enjoyed this conversation and came away with something useful. For me, I was surprised by the lucky breaks Jim experienced, in particular the ones centered around his time in the military. Some of life's biggest moments are created by chance and opportunity. Though it seems we can't directly control when and where these moments originate, we can control our ability to spot and seize upon them when they arise. I also appreciated Jim's emphasis on surrounding yourself with a winning team. Whether it was his wife Carol or his assistant coaches, Jim would be the first to recognize that individual successes rarely occur through the work of one person. As Coach Kleinschmidt has stated, quote, "It takes a village," end quote. If you intend to go far in life, try to surround yourself with a winning team. And finally, Jim's simple but important belief in doing the right thing is something that transcends sports and can be the basis for successful ventures in life. Whether it was while coaching a football team or serving in the military, this simple principle produced extraordinary results for Jim. This is Mason Beerbaum, signing off.